Hi, I'm Victor Lambs, and you're listening to The Secrets of Stargate, where we talk about hidden meanings and deeper layers found in the Stargate movies, TV series, and more. Joining me today are Jeff Haecker. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Victor. Blowing up planets is so hot right now.
It is. It's cool. And Lisa Jones. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Victor.
And today we are discussing the 6th episode of Season 2 of Stargate Atlantis, Trinity. The Atlantis team discovers an ancient outpost on planet Doranda amidst a barren wasteland with a wrecked Wraith armada in orbit. Dr. McKay, intrigued by the base's potential as a weapons platform, convinces Dr. Weir to allow further exploration, believing it could generate limitless energy and make ZPMs, or ZPMs, obsolete. Meanwhile, Ronan and Taylor go to planet Belkin to trade for seeds, where Ronan encounters another Satidan survivor, Solon Sincha, and learns of Kel, his former taskmaster, who is now a weapons trader. Back on Doranda, McKay's experiments with Project Arcturus go awry, with unpredictable radiation spikes killing a member of his team. Despite this, McKay persists, with the support of Colonels Caldwell and Shepard, only to learn from Zelenka that the project is inherently unstable. As the project fails and the power source overloads, they evacuate just in time, with the Daedalus providing cover from the now active weapons platform. 5/6 of the solar system is destroyed. Ronan also confronts and kills Kel for his past betrayals, affecting his relationship with Taylor, while McKay grapples with his mistakes and seeks to rebuild trust with his team. What did you think of this episode, Jeff?
Yeah, this was a fun one. Definitely better than the last Atlantis episode we did, but it was kind of funny thinking about how last week's SG-1, they blow up a planet. This week's SG-1, they blow up 5/6 of a solar system, as McKay says. But it was kind of interesting seeing McKay. There were kind of some, I don't think there's long-term consequences, but it kind of, at least, you see McKay getting, chewed out by Weir, and kind of that exchange with Shepard of, you'll have to regain my trust. There is actually showing some consequences for actions, which we haven't seen in, SG-1, I don't think, very often. Of, oh, you blew up a planet, no big deal. Oh, you let the replicators loose, no big deal. There's never really consequences. So it is kind of interesting seeing that, and yeah, getting a little bit more depth of Ronan and learning there are more Satidans out there, and we'll see some more as the show progresses. But yeah, this was a fun one. I enjoyed it.
Excellent. What did you think of this episode, Lisa?
I like it, but I don't like it. I really like it in that it's a great plot. You have lots of characters, lots of. I really like to see Ronan and Taylor go off together, and really her strength as a person, as a friend, as a team member, as a leader, and how she deals with Ronan. And then we get to see a little bit more of Ronan and his kind of his stoicism, but then how excited and emotional he is about finding out he's not the last Satidan, and then killing this guy out of nowhere, and him and Taylor dealing with it. I really liked that part. I liked the A plot. I did. I like McKay. And this episode made me mad at him. He was so arrogant and such a, and I guess that really, it just bothered me for him, right? The way that they developed the relationship between Shepard and McKay, and where he goes to him and says, you have to trust me. You can see the depth of their relationship that's been happening these last, I guess, year and a half-ish. And then, we're being pulled in different directions. And she seems to be the only one truly, truly concerned about life. And, what are the odds of this, going wrong and all of that. Where, Caldwell's over there like, let me get a weapon.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I really liked it. I'm glad they didn't bore us to death with all the techno babble. They just kind of did like the little fast forward scenes where they do like, oh, they're working on this. Oh, they're working on that. And then got to the meat of the episode. I like it. So I like it, but I was mad at McKay.
Yeah, I really like this episode a lot. And it is, I think, important that we see McKay kind of, he is his own worst enemy, and, to see him kind of hoisted on his own petard, where he thinks he's smarter than the ancients, and it comes back to bite him. I think, we may see this a couple more times. He's certainly not done playing around with vacuum energy and alternate dimensions, that's for sure. And I do really like the dynamic. He's downright, mean to Zelenka in this episode.
Mhm.
Footnote, Zelenka's always right. And I like Colonel Caldwell in this episode too, because he's pushing for McKay to develop this weapon, even to the extent to where he's ready to blame the dead scientist, for the initial failure, and I really like the scene where Weir confronts him on it, and he's like, "You just want to get your hands on a super powerful weapon," and he's like, "Yeah, I do."
Yeah.
It's like, what do you think we're out here doing? Yeah, and so I like that scene a lot. Mitch Pileggi plays that so well.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I really like the A plot. I like how Ronan isn't perfect and makes things genuinely difficult for Taylor. And I do like the scene at the end where after he's straight up murdered a guy, she's like, "Let's never speak of this again." The others won't understand. I can see where you're coming from and stuff. But so, and I do like that. And you're right. There isn't Jeff. There isn't much of a consequence to this. McKay has really betrayed the trust of Shepard, certainly, and his team, the ones who survived. And if this was even Voyager, Tom Paris sides with the terrorists on a planet, and he gets demoted down to ensign for a season, right? So we don't see anything like that happen to McKay. He doesn't have to go around and give like little flower baskets to everyone, but yeah, so I like it. It's got a really good kind of sciencey plot, which I think Brad Wright is really the one who contributes that. Damian Kindler said as he was writing, he would email Brad Wright and say, "Okay, how does this actually work?" And Brad Wright, who's a physics buff, would respond with detailed emails of how vacuum energy is supposed to work and radical particles and stuff. So I like that, and I really like this episode.
Yeah, and it was interesting too learning the history of this planet, because there was a race of humans here that were not ancients, but the ancients came to them and set up this base or set up this facility on their planet. So I don't know that we ever really see this again, and I don't think we've seen it really before, where ancients, who are not ascended, the Atlantean ancients actually work with a race of humans on whatever planet. So I think that's a one-off there, and could have been interesting in future future episodes. But that was kind of an interesting detail as well, because I didn't remember that there was a race of humans here, plus the ancients came up and try to do this. And I don't know why they did it here versus doing it on a abandoned world. I can't remember if they say anything in the episode, but I guess to give it some stakes because there's the Wraith fleet that's been in orbit that's been destroyed, and they think, oh, it's a weapon that destroyed them, we better get that weapon. But really it's the ancients own hubris, or maybe not hubris, but at least their experiment that went awry that led to that. So
Yeah, and when they walk in and they're like, "Oh, it looks like the ancients, like a lab, and they were doing experiments," we're like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah. This always goes well.
Yeah, not again.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were some really good moments, them getting in there, like where Taylor says, what was it like? Looks like there was a war or something. Or no, that was a hive, that's a hive ship. And Ronan's like, that was a hive ship,
Yeah.
So I kind of like you seeing them, the four of them working together. But yeah, I'm just like, why are you turning on stuff that the ancients failed at?
Yeah. I think the 9 scariest words in the Pegasus galaxy are like, "We're from Atlantis and we're here to help," right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's because every time the ancients have, come across a human, civilization that they've tried to partner with, either, they've experimented with their development, they've experimented on them, with creating the Wraith or whatever. And in this case, it was the ancients who basically like killed the entire planet.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it's if the ancients show up, you just kind of lock the doors and pretend you're not home, I think.
Maybe this is why the ancients have the ascended now have the policy we can't interfere with lesser beings. Because it's like, dude, enough. Stop it. Maybe it's because they have such a bad track record.
Yeah, and didn't in SG1 a few seasons ago, we saw another ancient super weapon that Orlin was kind of there to protect.
Yeah.
And so be careful of ancient super weapons, I think, except for the one at Dakara. That one's cool.
Yeah. That one worked as it was supposed to, right?
Yeah. But
that wasn't,
so
it wasn't necessarily a weapon though. It was repurposed or it was to seed life in the galaxy or whatever. So, but I mean, humanity will find a way to make it into a weapon, or somebody or the Gould will.
Yeah. I did like the initial scenes where the puddle jumpers flying through the decimated Wraith fleet, and apparently there was a few more minutes of that, but they had to cut it for time. And I do kind of like I like how the ancient lab was kind of built into, it looks just like an office complex or something. So it wasn't ancient architecture. They used the Durandon architecture there with the kind of, cool space cannon on the top and stuff. And if you like the set of the ancient lab in this, we'll see it again in a couple episodes in Aurora, because it's the same set. So yeah, and off to the side of this lab is the weird big room with like the glowy, space energy thingy, and so that's cool as well. And speaking of repurposed sets, over in our kind of our B plot over on the planet, whatever it's called, Belkin, we get to see our favorite set from Avalon and numerous other episodes.
Back in our medieval village.
Yeah. With our medieval tavern and the other things there too. So, but yeah, and apparently there was more to the scene with negotiating with the leader of the Belkans and stuff too. It just got cut as well, I think. But don't bring Ronan to your careful negotiations for GMO seeds or whatever they are. So
I did like that he before, earlier in the episode, he comes in, I guess it was her room or whatever, and he's like, "Where are you going?" And she's like, says the most boring thing possible, I'm going to go negotiate for seeds or whatever. And then she's like, "Do you still want to come?" And he's like, "I got to get out of here."
Yeah.
But I like that moment between them just because it makes sense that he's not been in one place for how long, in 7 years or whatever it was. And now he's been kind of stuck with the same people in the same place for however many weeks it's been. And Taylor gets it too, how hard it is. I think she gave us some monologues or whatever about that the first season, about not being able to see the stars and being amongst the trees and, how different it was for her and for her people.
Yeah, and I appreciated that too. It's like we just gotta stretch our legs here. And we get a brief guest appearance on Belkin from Christopher Gauthier, who was on Eureka as well. He had the cafe on Eureka, so it's always good to see him pop up, in these shows when he does. And so that was nice as well, I thought. And then, of course, Ronan learns that he's not the last Cetidan and that 300 of his people hid in a bunker and made it off the planet. And I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering, but his wife and child was killed on Cetida. And so we don't really see that. Yeah, we don't really see that here, that he's trying to, putting it together. It's like maybe my family was among the people who survived. He doesn't say that explicitly, but he does say, 300 of my people are alive, which is, I think, a nice moment.
I think later on we get a flashback of seeing the actual Wraith culling, and we see that scene of him, bidding his wife goodbye, like while he goes to fight, and I think she's a nurse or a doctor or something, and so she's staying behind to try to help people, or so. It's something along those lines. So I think we do see that in a flashback in later episodes. Yeah,
and so of course, his friend tells him that Kel is alive, and I really like the way that Jason Momoa plays this because he doesn't reveal, and they even noted this on the commentary, he doesn't reveal, how he feels necessarily about Kel being alive, just that, he's made a decision based on that information about what he's going to do next. And of course doesn't tell Taylor, so Taylor uses her influence with this village, which is probably pretty much, they're not going to be welcomed back, I think.
Yeah, cross that off the trading route.
Yeah, and sets up a meeting. Kel's like, okay, I'm here. What do you want? And Ronan just walks out and is like, pew, with this little gun. And yeah.
I think it was, I liked Drunk Ronan. I thought that was a really nice, this celebration with him and his friend. And, Taylor getting him to, putting him in bed and and the fact that he didn't give it away at all. So you had I thought that was great for us, the viewer, because you had no idea what was going to happen, that he was going to just shoot this guy. So, and then what was telling was that his private army, his entourage, nobody did anything.
Yeah.
They were like, okay.
Yeah, I almost took it as that Ronan was playing drunk. Like he was kind of pretending to be, deep in his cups when really he wasn't. He was, drinking, but maybe not enough to dull his edge, so that, playing along so that everyone would lull Kel into that false sense of security. So I don't know if anything said on the commentary about that, but that was kind of the way I took it. Even playing along with Taylor, putting him in bed so that he could, set up that revenge against him.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to play drunk. I think some people can do it really well. I don't think his friend, was a little goofy on it, and Ronan, I think, just looked like Ronan. So it was pretty hard to tell.
Of course, he was sloshing his mug so much he might have lost more beer or whatever from toasting than he did in drinking it.
Yeah. Or do the thing where you're like,
I've seen that as a trick
toast, and then you pour it out into the plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that as like a trick in spy movies. Like you splash your drink, you take tiny sips, you pour it out when you can, you order more drinks while your drink is half full or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Put it behind your head and look. So it looks like you're drinking.
Definitely.
That's expert spycraft, by the way. So
is that okay?
Yeah. And then just to finish up the B plot, Taylor does pull a knife on him at the end, and apparently Jason Momoa said, like, I want her to use like a real knife. I want the peril to be real. And of course, Martin Wood said no, absolutely not.
You're like, your insurance doesn't cover that. Our insurance doesn't cover that.
Yeah. Yeah, because knives and arteries don't really mix,
No. And I'm sure she would not have wanted to do that either.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine Rachel Luttrell going, okay.
Yeah, sure. Oops, need another Ronan. But yeah. But yeah, so not everybody makes it out of this episode alive. Besides Kel, of course, we have Dr. Collins.
Collins.
Yeah. Who is a member of Rodney's team. There's some funny bits with the dialogue. I don't know if they're funny, haha, but like, McKay's putting together his team. He's like, I want Collins, Optican, and Zelenka if he's over his stomach bug, which I didn't know. Zelenka wasn't in the last episode, but they didn't mention that he had a stomach bug or anything. But and then there's a reference to Dr. Vogel later on. It's like, energy loves this or whatever. Like Dr. Vogel loves pastries or something. And apparently in the writer's room, like Robert C. Cooper had a real problem with that line because there's no Dr. Vogel, right? And so he's like, people are going to wonder who Dr. Vogel is. It's jarring to mention a character that we haven't seen or heard of before. And the writer said, no, leave it in. It's funny, and it's just more mystifying than anything else.
It's funny. I heard it and I thought, is this some like cultural reference that I don't know?
No, yeah. You should, if you could have said like Homer Simpson loves donuts or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
that's what I thought. I was like, was there a TV show at the time or a book or a comic or something, But I guess not. I guess it was just random.
Yeah. I mean, one of the there's a German journalist who would pop up in various episodes. He would come over to Canada to report on Stargate. He was like a big Stargate, fan journalist in Germany, and they would put him in the episodes. And I think he's in the background drinking and when they're all kind of sitting around in the tavern. And I think his name might be Vogel. but I'm not sure. I mean, it wasn't really a reference to him either. So,
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Just one of those weird things. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But I really like the interplay between McKay and Zelenka early on, where they're both like giddy and excited. And it's, I think, the happiest and most excited we see Zelenka. There just takes to him, and he's just like grinning. Like at the promise of this limitless energy source.
I love it when they're explaining to Shepard what it is, and Shepard gets a lot of it, which I think Rodney almost is disappointed that Shepard is catching on. But then they're like, "Oh wait, it's the best part for last." Like, "Oh, we can't tell you. Oh, we can't tell you. Oh, it's so big. It's so big. It's so big." And then I forget even what it was now, like something to do with physics or something. And Shepard's like, "Okay, like that it? Like." Okay.
Yeah, I think it was saying they could recharge the weapon without having to wait for, or like the weapon didn't need to be weighted to be recharged. Like it was just automatically could draw the power. So
yeah, and then Shepard knew exactly what they were talking about. So they were deflated in that, like, oh darn, we don't get to explain it to you. So
yeah, and so there was a good callback to the satellite weapon. Which did take time to recharge, and that's why ultimately it failed to protect Atlantis during the siege. And this was originally written by Damian Kindler to be on like a kind of a super satellite, and he was thinking that they could reuse the satellite set that they had from the siege, but the set had already been dismantled at that point, and so at that point they set it on a planet and used the set from Aurora. But I don't think it gains or loses anything either way. I kind of like the idea of a whole planet, being decimated, or not just decimated, but completely wiped out by this thing too.
5/6 of a solar system.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
It's 3/4. It's 5/6 actually.
Yeah.
Shut up, McKay.
Yeah, and that's go ahead.
I can't remember if they ever have Carter and McKay kind of jabbing at each other about this, like, because she blew up a sun, but she did it on purpose. He destroyed a solar system, but by accident. So
yeah, it has to come up. I'm not sure if it does, but they have to.
Well, last week we were saying, she did blow up, or was involved in the blowing up of that planet, and maybe more, maybe not in 5/6 of a solar system, but a good chunk of it probably.
Right.
Yeah, and she's blown up planets and suns before. But yeah, maybe it comes up in Grace Under Pressure, or then when she joins Atlantis later on. But but yeah, so that's good. And then we kind of see McKay becoming unhinged McKay. We get a kind of cool montage as they're working through the problems. And I think a lot of that was improvised. I like the one where McKay's looking, it's like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that because, and then the screen says simulation failed. He's like, yep, there you go. Simulation failed,
Yeah.
And then of course the interplay between, Caldwell and Weir, and then they go back to the planet. They try to fire it up, but it quickly goes outside of parameters, and Collins runs into the little tube to try and fix it, and it bursts out, and he becomes a crispy critter. If you're watching this with captions, the captions just say sizzling.
It did.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I didn't need that description.
Yeah, and so the title Trinity refers to the Trinity test that the Manhattan Project did in July 1945. Just a few weeks before dropping the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and so it's meant to evoke kind of playing with powers that you don't really control. And we even get a reference to a member of the Manhattan Project, Harry Daghlian, who was 2324 and was playing around with the atomic pile. I shouldn't say playing around. He was, doing his job on it, and dropped, one of the graphite bricks, and then tried to fix things, but, got flashed with the radiation as it went, the pile went critical there, and died a few days later. But McKay, it invokes his memory here, and is part of what he uses to try and convince Shepard to trust him, and, not make Collins's death be in vain.
The whole thing with McKay kind of felt frenetic. just wound up or just got to go. Can't stop and think about it. It's like if we stop and leave it, his whole professional career is a failure. He can't even push pause. I mean, think about it. He goes to the other planet and Zelenka's like, tells Weir, I finally finished reviewing what happened for the accident,
Yeah.
I'm like, he went before everything was even finished reviewing. So I guess it just really bothered me because it felt so careless. So, just like he let his own ego and everything, it clouded everything for him. And I guess that just really bothered me because I had a hard time seeing someone who was so not just intelligent, but professionally successful. I mean, you think about it at this point, he'd been successful, just basically screw it all up royally.
Yeah. And I think it's partially explained, maybe not fully, by the fact that like the stakes or the carrot is so big in this case. It's like limitless vacuum, limitless energy and the power and everything that Atlantis needs. He can get it, in one shot. And I think that the carrot is just so big. I don't understand. He is very impulsive in this episode. I mean, we've seen impulsive McKay before, like, with the personal protection device and stuff as well. I mean, but yeah, it did. They have to cover a lot of ground in 42 minutes. So he escalates rather quickly from like, oh, this is cool to like, no, I must at all costs, get this thing working. I'm smarter than the ancients.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He said that a couple of times.
Yeah.
I guess to me, though, it makes sense for McKay. Like he's not a perfect scientist. He's not military, so he's not going to always be cautious. He's going to try to, he wants to make the big discovery. He wants to be the one. You're right. He does. His ego is at play, and like he wants to be the one to, he wants to be number one on the research paper on this, to prove how smart he is. And we do see there's a later episode. I think it might be a season 5 one where vacuum energy is involved, and he's actually the one kind of being cautious because he knows he remembers what happened here. So he does. They do reference. I think if indirectly they reference that and show that he grows, and McKay does grow over the course of this series. So he definitely gets, maybe not too humble, but he does get more humble than he is now. So, everyone has to grow up a little bit, and McKay definitely does. So I think I guess it makes sense to me. Like while yes, he's a brilliant guy, he still can be prone to there's, like you said, Victor, the carrot is so big and so tempting that like he's going to go for it just because he wants to be the one to show that he did it. So
yeah, like we're asked him what happens if you succeed, and he doesn't say we've created this unlimited energy and weapon and all that. He says, I win the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, best case scenario, I win the Nobel Prize.
And then she says, what's worst case scenario? And he's like, we tear a hole in the fabric of our universe and destroy everything. Yes, the pros greatly outweigh the cons there, sure.
Yeah, and but he is able to convince Shepard, and I did like how before it took like this whole team of scientists, and now it's just him and Shepard going back to the planet because they don't want to risk anybody else. Rodney is confident, and then Zelenka says it's inherently won't work. It's impossible that it will work. Because Shepard I think gives a really good speech. He says he's seen this before with pilots who won't eject from their planes because right up until they hit the ground they're trying to fix it and trying to save the plane. Now is the time to eject. And whether it's that speech or just McKay kind of looking down at the console and realizing that it's hopeless, they decide to run to the puddle jumper and get out of there while the cannon is kind of firing in all directions. And I kind of like that. It was like, oh, good, cannon out of control, just shooting in all directions. Yeah. But of course, as soon as it has something to lock onto, because again, the cloak isn't employed, it'll start blasting at the puddle jumper, right? And so they have to make it to the gate in time, avoiding the blast.
I like that Rodney is telling Shepard, so here he is trying to fly this plane, which is flown by your thoughts, right? And here's McKay like, well, don't get hit. Like this will happen or this will happen. Don't fly in a straight line. Don't. You're just like, shut up.
I did find it interesting that they didn't, even when they came through the gate the first time, they weren't cloaked. And I'm like, when do you want to be cloaked? And until you see what the situation is, and especially you start seeing, oh, there's destroyed ships. Maybe we should cloak and see until we know the situation. But I don't know. Maybe that was just too logical and would have, set up the end where they, the exciting end there.
Mm-hmm. Do they use malps and drones and all that like SG-1 always did?
They did once, but it might have been in one of the first episodes where the malp went through a space gate, and they're like, "Well, there goes that malp," because they sent it through the gate and it goes floating away. So I don't know if they use them that often, but
yeah. You would think that certain things wouldn't be a total surprise, like a graveyard of ships right on the other side of the gate.
Yeah, exactly. I think doing the malp takes up time, and it would kill some of the dramatic.
So
as well as
or they should develop like a drone probe or something, like you can send it through the gate.
Yeah.
And if it's a space gate, because there's a lot of space gates in Pegasus, there's not that many in the Milky Way apparently, but there's a lot in Pegasus, so they should develop something they could use for that. But I think they did use a malp when they went to Satita to see if Ronan's home was. They sent a malp through, so I think they do use them. Maybe like you said, that it saves time by not showing them being used, and you don't get the drama of flying through the ship graveyard.
Especially if the puddle jumper is cloaked, it would just be, it'd be like, what are we even looking at here?
That's true. Yeah. That makes sense then, because it was really kind of cool seeing the puddle jumper flying in the midst of all these ships.
Yeah. And then, of course, they're saved by the Daedalus, who acts as kind of like a screen to take and it's cool that the Daedalus is strong enough with the Asgard shields to take some hits from the cannon and protect the puddle jumper as they escape, because, of course, Colonel Caldwell was going to observe the test to see if it worked or not. So it's another cool Colonel Caldwell moment, and he's definitely much cooler than Colonel Pendergast. So
has more personality. For sure.
Yeah, more agency. Yeah. And then, of course, the solar system goes boom.
And we don't get to see Weir chewing out Rodney. We just get to hear little snippets of it.
Yeah, as Taylor and Ronan are coming through the gate, and they're like, hey, what happened here? And all of a sudden, everybody's like upset. And just like, okay, we'll just keep our head down and don't mention the murder that we committed.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, how about you go back to that planet where they sold you the seeds and you can get some more seeds? They're like, no. We're not going back.
Well, she did get them because they had the bag, right?
Yeah, I guess. Maybe they were happy to be rid of Kel, too. Who knows? If Kel was like extorting them or something. Yeah, and so I guess the dialogue between Weir and McKay, like that wasn't written into the script. And so they had to shoot it or do the overdubs. And Tori Higginson was like sending emails or calling the writer and saying, okay, what are we supposed to be saying here? And so I don't know how much of that is ad-libbed versus not, but it's kind of a neat moment. I think and then of course the ending is, I like the ending too, because I think Joe Flanagan plays it so well. He's, and I couldn't remember if he like forgave him or said he was going to trust him again at the end, or if he was just like, no, Rodney, like you're dead to me now or something. But I think the ending was very good. Rodney kind of does a apology, not apology, but as much of an apology as Rodney would ever do.
I'm sorry it ended up that way.
Yeah.
Sorry you were upset.
Yeah.
You're right.
About the planet blowing up. But I do like Colonel Shepard saying, if you work really hard at it, maybe I will trust you. You can earn back my trust. And then he teleports away in the Atlantis teleporter.
Well, and that makes sense because, next week they got to be a team again.
Exactly.
So it'd be really bad if Shepard was like, nope.
Taylor, will you tell Rodney that I'm not speaking to him?
Maybe they could have had couples therapy with the blonde doctor.
Heitmeyer, yeah.
Heitmeyer.
Ronan, will you tell Shepard that... Yeah, that would have been funny.
At some point, she's got to be like, Rodney, I'm going to give you a discount.
Exactly.
You've got so much we got to work out here.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the ending. Rodney is, of course, crushed but hopeful that, he can rebuild the trust among his team. So I didn't have any more thoughts on that. How about you?
Nothing else here other than, I've said it earlier, but the line when he's being chewed out by Weir, she's like, you destroyed 3/4 of the solar system. Well, it was 5/6 actually. Like, it's just continuing to show his ego and his, like, he's going to make sure he gets the proper credit for what he did, even if it's negative.
Yeah.
Like, don't short me on how much I destroyed.
For me, there's a part of me that would have enjoyed the subplot Ronan and Taylor as its own episode. I think exploring Ronan's, because it's a really big emotional deal. I mean, it really is to think he's the only one left. His planet's been destroyed. That was only a couple episodes ago. He's been living with this for years, and then suddenly he's not. Yeah. And I loved the way they did it, but at the same time, man, that could have been. And then the evilness of this other, what was his name, Kel, and that the fact that she said that, or the guy said that Kel has his own private army, and they're doing all these things. I mean, like, that sounds like it could have been a decent plot there to do something with.
Yeah, it's to quote the internet channel, it's barely an inconvenience, right? His private army,
Yeah.
Dealing with that.
I regret that. I mean, I love the way they did it here, but at the same time, I kind of regret that it wasn't a bigger episode, because I think, exploring different worlds, planets, things that are all how they've developed with the Wraith. I think that's good. The episode was good. I was really, really disappointed in McKay. So,
yeah.
It just hurt me a little.
He feels your disappointment, I'm sure.
Yes.
We did have some alternate languages.
Okay.
In German, we got Das Geheimnis der Antiker, which is the secret of the ancients. So that's a good one. In French, a little bit more out there, we got L'expérience interdite, which is the forbidden experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't know what the forbidden experience is, but
it's or would it be? Is it experience?
It's going in a whole different direction.
I can speculate, but we like to keep these things under 40 minutes if possible.
Yeah.
And then in Japanese, we got Kyoyoku no Power, which is the ultimate power.
Oh.
Yeah. They probably, didn't want to reference the Trinity test, I would imagine. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, probably. Oh, but we do have some feedback on episode 193. That was our The Powers That Be episode. A comment from Professor McCoy. He writes, speaking of one-off episodes in season 9 and 10 needing better villains than the Ori, I can't wait for those few Glorious Ball episodes.
Yes. Coming up very, very soon.
Yes. You will not have to wait long. One week, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep. All right. Well, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Stargate, including Jack B. And that is Jack Berzini, who isn't with us today, but thank you for being a patron and supporting us here. And Peter R., Peter D., Ivan I., and Father Carl W. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Stargate and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give, and be sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or find our video versions at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. And to find previous episodes of Secrets of Stargate and to send feedback, please visit sqpn.com/Stargate. You can email us at stargate@sqpn.com or follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on X at SQPN. And we'll be back next time with the next episode of Stargate SG-1, Ex Deus Machina. Until then, Jeff Haecker, thank you for joining us and sharing the Secrets of Stargate.
Thanks, Victor.
And Lisa Jones, thank you too.
Thanks, Victor.
And once again, I'm Victor Lambs. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Stargate on StarQuest. And look, this is big. This is the wheel, the light bulb, the hot dog big.
The hot dog.
Anyway, I'm sorry, but that just happens to be how I feel about it. What do you think?